The title of Grady's speech is Grady versus a Mack truck. Please welcome Grady.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, distinguished guests. I want to tell you today about an event that happened in my life. And sometimes we've got these events that can happen, and it can be a really embarrassing, kind of a shameful event that we really want to hide and never talk about again. But yet at the same time, as is in this case, it could be something that I stand back on and look at as one of the most courageous things that I actually did. Stupidity and courageousness in the same instance. I'm not sure if I should tell you this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I came from Chicago, and that's where this event happened, and it has to do with traffic. Here in Charlotte, we've got a different traffic situation, right? When it comes to rush hour, there's really two types of rush hour. One is in that morning section for a couple of hours. Next is in that evening section for a couple hours. The rest of the time, it actually flows pretty smoothly. If you're local here, you may not think that, but in some of the major cities like Chicago, it's very different. In Chicago, there's just one time where there's rush hour. That time is from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's rush hour. It's lockdown, bumper to bumper. Just a really crazy time, and we lived in that. My wife and I were in Chicago, and we had a car, although we didn't really need one. We really could have just gone around on our cabs and our buses and our trains, but we had a car for the occasional outing. And one time we were out, and we were coming back, and we were merging onto the highway. Now we all know there's a system of merging onto the highway, right? You've got one car, and then the other car, and then the other car, and then the other car. And it's this universal truth that that's the merge. We go back and forth and back and forth. Now, there's a little bit of, in my opinion, discrepancy in how that works when you've got different sized vehicles. So, for instance, when you've got one car going, another car going, another car going, but then you've got a big old Mack truck that goes the whole distance here. It's kind of silly for somebody to just sit right here on the side and wait for that Mack truck to go all the way by. Especially if the car in front actually has enough space between the Mack truck. This was my revelation at about 9 o'clock at night on a lockdown, packed highway as we were trying to move in. I'm sitting with my wife, and I'm driving, and I'm kind of behind the Mack truck, and I'm kind of about to merge in. And as I start to get onto the lane, I realized that the car that pulled in front of me actually was pulling away from the truck, and there was plenty of room there. So I thought, why would I sit and wait? Why not drive up, slide in there, and life will be good? So I did that. I started to drive up, and all of a sudden, I heard the revving of the engine of the truck next to me. I said, wait a second. That's not how this is supposed to go down. This truck is actually trying to speed up. Now, truthfully, he was in the right to do that, right? Because he's the merge system. But, I kind of said, wait a minute, I don't want it to work out that way. So I continued to proceed a little bit even faster, and I kept going, moving forward. Still, plenty of room between the Mack truck and the car in front of me. So I get up in front of the truck, and I'm probably looking evenly to my left at his bumper. So I'm kind of in front of him now, thinking there's plenty of room, I'll just keep going, and I'll slide right in. So as I start to make my movement to slide in, I hear the truck accelerate again, make more noise, that big burly sound that comes out, and the truck starts speeding up. But I'm thinking, once he sees me moving in front, he's going to slow down. So I just keep sliding right in. All of a sudden, I get jacked in the back left-hand side of my car. My car gets elevated into the air because I'm caught on his hubs, his spokes of his wheel, and that's hooked onto the back left side of my vehicle. I told you this was embarrassing for me, right? So that was the embarrassing part. So here I am, my wife's in the car, I yanked the car off to the right so I get off the truck, and now I'm fuming. I'm very upset because I thought this truck should have just slowed down. After all, that should be the rules of the road. We're just, we're the little cars. You big trucks, you just drive. Us, the rest of us, will kind of fill in the gaps on where we are on the highway. This makes sense to me. Doesn't make sense to the police, but that's a different story. So, still in the humiliation part, I decide to go as fast as I can up the shoulder of the road. So I drive up the shoulder of the road, and about 30 or 40 yards up, I stop. I open the door, and I get out of my car. Close the door. I wait for the cars that were in front of that Mack truck to proceed forward. And then I do what was both humiliating, yet courageous at the same time. I step in the middle of the road, and I stand there like this and stare at the Mack truck. Now, the cars aren't flying by, right? This is rush hour at 9 o'clock at night. So it's 5-10 miles, just everybody's driving by. I can imagine the looks on their faces. They were looking at seeing this guy standing in the middle of the highway, just staring down a Mack truck. but I didn't even notice what they were doing because I was just ticked off. So I did something that I saw in the movies before, and I thought it looked really cool. And it was pretty cool. I looked at him, and I went, and he did it. He went over, and he slid off to the side of the road. He obeyed what I told him to do because I was ticked off, and he saw that he had to do that. Now that was the courageous part. I felt like in that moment I had this moment of strength. And as I then went over to confront him and speak with him, I realized that he was the quintessential truck driver, and all of the courageousness kind of walked out the door. And I realized there was going to be no confrontation past what we had just experienced in that moment right there. So we kind of did, it kind of got anticlimactic after that. We kind of looked at the damage. Of course, to his truck there was 0, and of course to my car there was some. Still drivable, so eventually the police came. We sat in the back seat, chatted for a while. They gave us both tickets. Apparently it's a dual fault accident. And then we went off on our way and went home. So why am I telling you that story? Because in my life I've had plenty of instances where I've lived my life, I've made a mistake, I've learned from the mistake, and then I've moved on. And I'm happy to report that since that day, 7 or 8 years ago, I have never since had an incident with a Mack truck. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster.